Hello traders, Rich here and welcome to a new episode on how to analyze any chart from scratch without using any indicators, just by applying basic price action concepts at Market Structure 101. So let's get started, and as usual, cheers. Today we have episode number 35, which is a crypto instrument this time, Helium, or its symbol HNT. If you aren't familiar with the series, don't worry, and make sure to attach the entire playlist, which includes all the videos by order, in the description below. And I also attach my Telegram channel, where I forward the analysis and videos from TradingView and YouTube, in case you want to get notified. So let's do it. For those who already know from the previous 34 episodes, we start from the higher time frames, weekly and daily, which we call our rejection time frames, to know where we stand in the market, right? Are we overall bullish, bearish, or stuck inside the range? And as price approaches the lower bound for our support area, it can be horizontal, just like this one, or non-horizontal. We'll be looking for buy setups. And as price approaches the upper bound for our resistance area, can also be horizontal or non-horizontal. We'll be looking for sell setups. Now we have three types of rejections which can be found on higher time frames. The first one is a typical supply and resistance. We have many failed attempts to break above or below a certain level or area. The second one is a supply and demand zone. When we have an aggressive movement upward, that's a demand. And as price approaches it again, we'll be looking for buy setups, vice versa. When we have an aggressive movement downward, that's a demand zone. As price approaches it again, we'll be looking for sell setups. The third type is a trend line, or also known as a non-horizontal support and resistance. And we do have one here, right? So like we already did our analysis, we have a demand and we have a trend line. So it's a non-horizontal support, and as price approaches it again, we'll be looking for buy setups. So let's do just that and find our three types on Helium now. Let's start with our support and resistance. The way to do it is very simple. You always draw a random line on your chart and drag and drop it to connect as many swings as possible. We start from weekly, then we zoom into daily time frame. In this particular one, we can see that we've got one here. It's not like we don't have a support and resistance, but it's the all-time high, so we should keep it, right? And let's make it around 60 round number. Now let's go lower, and we can find that here we only have one rejection. So usually I would like to see at least two rejections, no matter if it's two highs, two lows, one low, one high, right? It doesn't really matter. But typically, if we've got three rejections, it is considered a strong one. But like for crypto, we might not like find many typical supply and resistance, but on Forex or like a different instrument where you have many or previous data, you can find more. But for now, let's go for at least 2, 3, it would be better. If you go lower, we only have one here. If you go any lower also, you only have one rejection. It has to be like a full swing and not like only like wicks, right? So this is not considered two rejections. It's only one. So let's go lower. We can't really find anything here. Only one rejection. If you go lower, only one. Only like around two here, but we got a stronger one around this area because we've got a resistance turned into support and now turned into a resistance, right? And you've got a one around this area, also around round number 30. But let's keep the chart clean for now. And anyway, we'll draw the 30 when we zoom into daily time frame. So we've got, this is our first rejection. And if you make lower, let's go around round number 25. Of course, it's an entire zone, but to make our chart clean, let's keep it as a laser level, right? That's how you keep your chart as clean as possible. Now, if you go lower, let's go for green now because we've got our blue up there. If we go lower, we can find also one around here. Like we don't have rejections here. As you can see, price is not respecting it and not here as well. If you go lower, we can see that the price respected this one previously multiple times. It was acting as a resistance, then price broke upward. It's now acting as support, and we've got also our previous high, which can become a potential support area. So if price is trading higher, and now this area, which is the previous high, especially from a weekly time frame or a higher time frame, then it can act as a potential support. And this is a perfect example for Helium. Previous high turned support, previous high turned support, and vice versa. Previous low turned resistance, previous low turned into a resistance. a potential resistance, right? So that's it. Let's go for 18.5 for this one. And again and again, it's an entire area. I'll draw it as a level to keep the chart clean. And of course, we've got one here, which happens to be also a very strong round number 10. Let's go for blue for this one. And that's it for helium, right? So we've got our supply and resistance, 10, 18.5, 25, and also the 30, which we are going to draw next. Now, let's go for our non-horizontal supply and resistance, which I already drew it, right? So you already saw it. But it's very simple. You don't need like any tools or like anything to help you draw it. You just need to find the overall direction. So the main aim of a trend line is to find if the price is going upward or downward, to find the overall feeling or to get a feeling about where the price is heading, right? So in this particular case, if the price is going upward, I want to find like the upper bound and the lower bound. That's our main aim. We don't want to buy or sell on to break down or upward. It's just for us to know the overall direction. And we can find one here, as mentioned previously. Of course, that's also an entire zone like this, but I like to keep it as a laser level to keep the chart clean. Of course, we always try to make an offset for it like this. So previously we had this one here. So we drew it from these two lows and we expected that price might reject the upper band, right? So and next, price broke it upward, so went parabolic and traded higher and higher in an aggressive manner. So for now, this trend line is no longer acting as a potential resistance or potential overbought area. That's why you have to adjust it to like feel the overall market. The first scenario we can go for this one, which is an overall channel, or we can also go, or like you can draw both, right? But to complete the chart as clean as possible, you can draw it as this. As a rising broadening wedge. Like, don't worry about the names, no matter if it's a wedge or channel. I don't know the name maybe, but I know that the overall action is like this. Okay, so focus on trend lines no matter its name. So this is basically it. And as mentioned previously, I can also go for this particular one. Okay, but let's delete it for now. So our overall bullish approaching a support area, which is this previous resistance turn support, the lower brown trend line. That's why we are looking for buy setups, because when we are overall bullish, as mentioned many times previously, we'll be looking for buy setups, right? But you don't want to buy blindly, because you don't want to buy at the end of the impulse and suffer from a period of drawdown. We want to catch this one at the best rate possible. That's why even though we are overall bullish, we don't just like enter the buy. We always wait for the correction to look for setups, and we don't buy immediately at the correction, because we can't really know where the correction will end. It can end here, just like this projection, or even like early, or even dive deeper to the last low, just like this one, right? Before trading higher. That's why we don't buy. We just zoom into lower time frames to look for extra confirmation that the buyers are finally taking over. Okay, so the higher time frames are just for rejections, for overall direction. Okay, we don't like take decisions here. We just know where we are in the market, then we zoom in for extra confirmation. So that's basically it. So, we've got our supply and resistance, we've got our trend lines. Now let's go for supply and demand zones. And of course, I also gave you an example. We've got a very strong demand area around here, a supply zone here, and a supply zone here. But I'll not draw it for now. I'll stick to the demand, and also I will not draw it because I want to keep my chart clean. So I got my support, I got my trend line, so like I don't need to draw it for now. I know that we have a rejection here, right? So, but it's also a very strong demand area, as we had an aggressive movement upward from it. So now price is around it. In fact, this area is a very strong area to look for buy setups, because it's the intersection of a support in green, a non-horizontal support in brown, and this demand area. That's why we are looking for buy setups in the first place. Now, that's it from weekly. We found our 3 rejections. Now let's go to daily time frame. And usually when you find like so many info from weekly, you can't really add anything from lower time frames, right? From daily. So this is basically it. Just one thing is that this is our 30 round number that we've got from. Here we go. And let's go for green. And you know what? To keep that as clean as possible, I draw it as a zone like this to cover this high. So this is our round number 30. Okay. So, overall bullish, looking for buy setups, and from a market structure perspective, we know that we were in a correction phase, right? However, what we know is that the sellers are exhausted. So we were overall bullish, then price broke below the previous low. So now starting from here, we are bearish. We had a classic retest to the previous low, which I mentioned previously. A previous low can act broken downward can act as a potential resistance, and the previous high, of course, broken upward can act as a potential support. So now broken downward, a classic retest, and price started to make lower highs and lower lows, right? However, what we can notice, that's how you feel the price. What we can notice is the impulse movements pushing lower are getting weaker and smaller, right? So this is a big distance. This is also a big and steep distance. However, if you compare it to the previous one, we know that it's smaller in size. Now, things are getting interesting. Look at this one. So let me draw back these ones, right? Look at this one. It's smaller and it's going a little bit flat. Look at this one, even smaller and more flat, right? So now you get a feeling about what's happening right now, that the sellers are still pushing lower because they are still making lower highs. However, they are exhausted. And it happens to be that it happens, right? That we've got our support area, a non-horizontal support, a demand, and so on. So now we are looking for buy stops, waiting for the buyers to take over. And from a technical or like market structure perspective, for the bulls to take over, we need to see a break above the high. Now, no matter if the impulse are getting weaker, the sellers are getting weaker, exhausted, it's not like an indication. It might be just a correction or a range before we see another drop down. That's why we don't just buy, right? So we always wait for extra confirmation for the bulls to take over. We need to see a break above the previous high. Now, if you zoom in a little bit, we can draw what? This is also daily. So we can also draw a rejection trend line, and we can draw this one, which engulfs the overall movement downward, right? So let's go for red for this one. Or you know what? Let's go for orange because we got like brown, which is like almost red. So this is it, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and let me make it a little bit lower. That's it. And we can now see better that the impulse are getting smaller and weaker, right? And if you want to find the next one, it can be this one, but it's only connecting one swing. So how about we make it follow the price action more? And this is it. Now you can see that we've got a wedge pattern, which is a stronger reversal pattern than a channel, because a channel, the price would be making deep corrections, deep impulse movements going lower, right? However, for the wedge pattern, we can see that the impulse are getting smaller and smaller. So which means also from a structure perspective that the sellers are getting weaker. Okay, so we've got a wedge pattern. This is our last high. So from a long-term perspective, for the bulls to take over, we need to see a break above this high. It's just an early alert, a support. Sellers are getting weaker, but we want extra confirmation. So in this particular case, we'll be waiting for this swing high to be broken upward. And since we have our support area from daily and weekly, which we saw previously, which is around 30, then we also have a rejection here, and we'll also be waiting for a break above this area, right? So from a medium-term perspective, for the buyers to take over, we need to see a momentum candle close above this area. So that's our first trigger. So like, for example, you can enter with like half the intended amount that you want to enter with on Helium. Of course, it's not financial advice. It's just like to give you an overall view on how you could do it. You can apply the same logic on any altcoin or on any instrument. You can watch my previous 34 episodes, 34, sorry, episodes. I went over Forex pair and index and commodity, right? You can apply the same logic on any instrument. So the second trigger would be around this area. So like how I would personally do it is enter with half risk here, and then I would enter the second half around this area. In this case, we'll be expecting that we are overall bullish and waiting for the buyers to take over again to catch what? Next impulse movement upward. Meanwhile, and until the buy is activated, until we see this medium-term break, Helium can still trade lower to make a double bottom pattern, for example, around this area before breaking it upward, or even break this support for it to become resistance and even trade lower and lower. That's why, even though we are overall bullish from a long-term perspective, we always wait for extra confirmation on long time frames. Now, this same pattern is visible on H4, so which is usually our trigger, but I will not zoom in now. I don't need to zoom in because everything is clear from daily time frame. So that's basically it for helium. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you want me to go over a specific instrument next time, write down in the comments, and I'm happy to do it. Of course, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and on Telegram. Everything is attached in the description below. And of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It would help me big time. Best of luck, and I'll see you on the next episode.